Thank you all for being here, for joining us for another Laptop Cinema Club. You know, it's my favorite thing to do on a weekly basis. And I'm really glad to see all of y'all show up. And I really, really hope that you've been able to check out the high note already. If not, you need to get on that VOD and just get your life, because we are living in a quarantine situation right now. You need to do something to make yourself feel good. Get into this movie. I want to welcome everyone again, here tonight. I'm very excited that we get to talk to WIF board member, Reframe ambassador, Nisha Ganatra, about the high note and, just about the genesis of this film, getting to talk to her about her work in general, and having that conversation will be WIF's own executive director, Kirsten Schaffer. But before we get started tonight, I do want to let you know about some other great events we have coming up over the next few days. You're not going to want to miss them. So very importantly, tomorrow, and this is specifically for our Black members, we are having a Black member forum, and it is for Black members at any level. This is going to be a space where we can come together, we can share our feelings, we can talk about the organization, how the organization can best support its Black membership. We can share resources. We want to celebrate Juneteenth, but we want to celebrate each other and our work. So that's tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Get your cup of coffee. Join me at 9:30 a.m. for the Black Member Forum. On Tuesday, June 23rd at 5 p.m., we've got another Laptop Cinema Club with Channing Godfrey-Peoples to talk about her film, Miss Juneteenth. She's going to be in conversation with writer Dr. Tyon Coleman. And then Wednesday, June 24th, really excited about our annual DCA production program showcase. This is a celebration and a WIF premiere of the short films BFF and Your Monster. We'll have a panel discussion with the filmmakers after the screening, and that's gonna be moderated by Kira Karstensen, who's the Emmy and WGA award-winning writer and co-executive producer on The Handmaid's Tale for Hulu. So check that out, that's gonna be on Wednesday the 24th. But you are here tonight to hear from Nisha. So let me tell you a little bit more about this amazing director we have with us tonight. She directed the Sundance hit film Late Night, starring Emma Thompson and Minda Kaling. At Sundance, the film sold to Amazon in a record-breaking deal and garnered the highest streaming numbers of the year. She's a Golden Globe winner and Emmy nominee for her work as the director-producer for Transparent. Her acclaimed debut feature, Chutney Popcorn, won numerous Best Feature and Audience Awards at many film festivals, including the Berlin International Film Festival, and her sophomore feature, Cosmopolitan, starring Carol Kane and Rashawn Seth, premiered at South by Southwest. She's very excited to talk to us tonight about the high note, talk to us about Tracee Ellis Ross and the rest of the incredible cast: Dakota Johnson, Ice Cube, Kelvin Harrison Jr., June Diane Raphael, Zoe Zhao, and Eddie Izzard. She says it's a career dream to make a film with working title, with focus. She's still pinching herself. She plans to direct everything Flora Greason ever writes and anything working title and focus plan to produce. And we're going to see them all, and we're going to celebrate them all here at Women in Film. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kirsten.
Thanks, Ebony. That was a great introduction, and always fantastic to see you, Nisha, and get to share this space with you. So hi.
Hi, thanks.
I only wish that we were in person. But
I know, it's such a bummer, but
for now, this will do.
It's better than.
We have the rest of our lives to be in person.
Yes, let's hope so.
So it makes total sense to me that this is a movie that you would make, given the Late Night and Chutney Popcorn, the kinds of comedies they were, the kinds of broad comedies that they were, and also given a lot of what you have done in your television career. Also, this script was a Blacklist script, so already had some familiarity and notoriety coming into it. But I wonder what it was like for you when you first read it, and particularly for the women on the call who are writers. Like, what's it like for a director to read that script and know it's the thing you want to make?
Oh my God. Well, I mean, I read it, and I think it was everyone who's read the script says the same thing about it. It was that it was just a really easy read. Like, you just kept flipping the pages and you were laughing and enjoying yourself and couldn't wait to kind of see what was coming next, even though you were totally happy and pleased to be in the scene you were in. So I don't know, that's such a tall order for a script to like ask for it to be that way. But I love that it was, two female leads. I love that they were smart and that they were really layered, and that they were ambitious, and that they were unapologetic in their being really good at their jobs and what they did. That it seems like sometimes lately, especially, the trend is that if you have a really smart woman, she has to like trip on her heels or be a bit of a klutz, or like something that kind of takes down her power to make her a little less threatening, and or be a disaster in some way in some other area of her life. And these women just weren't that. They were just really, really good at what they did and really dedicated to getting better. And I think that was just really appealing to me. I hadn't read that in a really long time, or seen a movie like that in a long time.
And so after you read the script and you were excited about it and you knew it was something you wanted to work on, talk to us a little bit about the process after that. Like, what happened next?
So then I got, my agent set up a meeting with Working Title. And so, well, first I had already met with one of the executives, I think. So all of this is sort of preambled by years and years and years of meetings with all these people, so that when it finally happens that you get a project and you're in a place to be hired by the studio, this was my first studio film, and it had been so many years of meeting on so many studio films and not getting any of them, but at least getting to know the people who were involved with even getting you in the room to get hired. So it's a really long game, which I don't think I knew at the time. I just sort of would run in thinking, I'm going to get this one, and then devastated that I didn't get it, and then run in again. And this one, it was so interesting because it was so smooth. I think because it was after so many years of so many meetings, that it, rather than being like, and this is this person and here's what they do, it was like, oh, and here's this person you met 2 years ago and here's what they're doing now, So after that, I met with Working Title, which had our producer, Ali Lowy, and sort of presented my vision of the movie to her. And we talked through it. And then she was really great. She was like, was a fan of late night. And she kind of helped me refine my pitch, so that when we went to the studio to say, here's Nisha, she was like, this is the director we would like, and here's her vision. She kind of helped me make the vision in a way that the studio would feel good about, So it was this really amazing effort of, I felt like there were a team of people who really wanted me to get the job and really helped me get it, and then really supported me so that I didn't blow it once I did get it. And that was a really cool experience. It was all, a lot of male allies that really were in positions of power and said, yes, we're going to have a female director who's never done a studio film before do this film. So that was really unique and awesome.
I think that's an important note for our members to hear. Of course, we always want the process to go faster, and we think that qualified women should get hired off that first interview, and we're steadily moving forward towards that. But there, what's that saying? Like, every no gets you closer to a yes.
Yeah.
So those no's got you closer to the yes.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it was years of no's.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the casting process? Such an incredible cast, like so special to see everybody on screen, particularly Tracee Ellis Ross in that role, yeah. and talk about how that went.
Sure. Well, Tracee Ellis Ross, like, she hadn't made a feature film before, so she was sort of the, it was her first film, and it was also her first time singing in public, which was really nerve-wracking for her, because she's obviously the daughter of Diana Ross, and I think she was really terrified to be compared to her mom in a singing role. So I was sort of trying to think of who could be this character. Like, these movies are really difficult in the sense that if you don't buy that this main character is an icon, then the whole movie kind of falls apart, right? So it kind of reminded me a little bit of Notting Hill, which is a movie I loved, but it had the tricky feat of pulling off a similar character. And they had Julia Roberts playing the movie star, who, like, at that time, Julia Roberts was the biggest movie star in the world, and it still kind of barely worked. And then I was terrified. I was like, well, what am I going to do so that you really buy that this woman is a music icon? And I also need somebody who's really strong with comedy, and also somebody who can kind of break your heart, and also someone fearless and like a little bit larger than life royal. And it was kind of cool because I just couldn't really think of any other actress. Like Tracee also brought to the part firsthand knowledge of, a music icon. And she made the portrayal, I think, a lot more layered and nuanced than another actor might have just played their idea of a music icon, where she really was like, my mom didn't have assistants, we were my mom's assistants. And she brought like kind of really great personal stories to it. And then, the greatest moment of all time was when we all went to a Diana Ross concert together, and I got to meet Diana Ross, and I was just, taking notes the whole time, watching like how she behaved and what she was doing and how Tracee was with her mom, and all of that just really informed the movie in a really beautiful way.
Where did you guys go for that concert?
We actually had to go to Vegas for the concert, which was just so surreal. It was just like a bizarro, amazing moment where, it's like filmmaking is never glamorous like we all think it is, but then there are some times where it's really glamorous and like that. And so it's always like it's not glamorous until it's super glamorous, and then it's really not again. Like I'm sometimes often on set just like staring at the outhouse that is our bathroom for the day, going, no one really told me about like the fact that you were going to live on a trailer and pee and out. Like it's basically like going to work at a construction site every day. It's just like this weirdo lifestyle that we lead.
Talk a little bit about how you found David. He's such a special character, and what an incredible voice.
Yeah, I mean, that is Kelvin Harrison Jr., who I think is the real like secret star of the movie. He's very like, he kind of sneaks up on you, but I'd seen him in this movie from Sundance called Loose, and was just really struck by his performance and how compelling he is on screen. And then he came out in a movie called Waves, but I'd seen that after we already cast him. I just got to have a meeting with him and he did a chemistry read with Dakota, and it was really sweet. Like he actually was the one who brought out this sort of funny side in her, and he was also like a pretty amazing romantic leading man, but I think nobody's let him play that part yet, like because I don't know why actually, but I think he is like an incredible romantic leading man. And then I had to figure out, well, can this guy sing, or am I going to have to do that horrible movie thing where I dub his voice? And it turns out he was a composing major at school. His parents are both, like, his mom's an amazing singer, his dad's a saxophonist, and they were just like incredible musical family. And he went to the studio. He'd never done it before, and he was nervous, but then he sang, and you hear that voice, and because that voice was a hard voice to cast too, because the script said that voice stops Maggie in her tracks, and so we needed the song and the voice that would absolutely do that. So that was really tricky.
I think that's a great segue into talking about the music. So obviously music plays a huge role in it, and some of them are, familiar songs, Sam Cooke and Aretha Franklin, but then there's also some original composition.
Yeah.
And so was that written in the script, or did that did you bring them on to do that later?
Yeah, I mean, what's written in the script is Maggie and David sing a song, or Maggie listens to David's song. And so suddenly you're breaking down the script and you're like, oh, what is that song? And then you realize, oh, I have to go like hire somebody to write that song and then produce that song and then teach Kelvin how to sing that song and then record Kelvin singing that song, all while I'm also prepping a movie and then have to have it play back while we're shooting that scene. And we did that, I think there were 7 original songs in the movie. So basically me, Linda Cohen, and Ali Lowy, the producer, and Dana, our other producer, were sort of like producing an album as we were prepping a movie. And that, I think, was something I did not predict, having never done a music-driven movie before. I would now know to ask for a little more time in prep, because that was pretty intense to be doing both those things simultaneously. And then the actors too were sort of doing all the prep work for a movie, as well as going to recording studios and demoing songs, and then learning how to play instruments and learning choreography. And it was really intense boot camp for all of us.
I was actually thinking about you when I was watching a couple of the scenes, but particularly at the end where they're on that scene. It looks like maybe it's the Ford Amphitheater. Is it the
Yes,
Ford? That
absolutely.
last scene, yeah. And I was like, oh my God, Nisha just shot like a full on music scene, like
Yeah.
and I was like, I don't think I've seen that in any of your work before.
No, no. And there were like, two big performance concerts like that. But it's so funny, the Ford, because the first time I ever went to the Ford was because of you, and you were the director of Fest, and you had that amazing screening. I think you're the one that brought on like screenings at the Ford, right? And everybody drives by this amazing landmark on the 101, and nobody is like, oh my God, that beautiful theater is right there. Like, so because of you, I had gone to the Ford and seen, I think you also did you and Kim Yutani did The Impossible, where you brought Hole back together. And then of course, like Courtney Love didn't show up, but you had the replacement singer, Sia. So that was just like a tiny little person named Sia that came along. So we were all at the Ford and had this magical night. And I just remembered it when I read that scene. I was like, this should be at the Ford because it should be outside, and it's such a beautiful LA landmark and nobody knows it's there. And that was a really beautiful place to shoot. And also what was fun was like shooting in LA, and there were so many locations where people who were born and raised in LA on our crew were saying, I've never been here, or I've never shot here,
Right.
That was cool to show a part of LA that nobody's seen.
Yeah, in fact, you have a lot of kind of iconic sort of LA places throughout it, from the Capitol Records building to the Hollywood Hills. Now,
Yeah.
of course, I don't remember the name of the trail that everybody hikes.
Everybody calls it Runyon, but
Right, the Runyon Canyon hike. Like, there were like a lot of moments I thought that was just nice to see LA sort of in its own environment.
yeah, thank you. That was definitely a goal, because I feel like whenever I watch movies that take place in LA, sometimes, or bigger movies like studio films, you'll just see like the shot of the palm trees and the Beverly Hills sign or the ocean, but nobody really digs into the east side or the nature, or the fact that everybody goes on hikes here, which is so unique for a big city. It's such a beautiful city, and I love that Capitol Records building that we just like drive by so many iconic buildings with so much history all the time, and it's fun to just stop and go inside of them and show you what you're sort of just whizzing by on the freeway every day.
I thought it was a really nice mix too in the production design of some really sort of exquisite architecture in David's house, and obviously in Grace's house, but then also this like kind of hippie house that Maggie's dad lives in, right?
Yeah.
So it really shows you that sort of, a lot of different sort of environments in Los Angeles. And I thought it's a good job of kind of capturing all those moments.
Thanks, Kirsten. Yeah, it was really fun to think about where they live. It is one thing that always strikes me about LA, and I remember before I ever even was here watching Boys in the Hood and thinking, oh my God, that's a bad neighborhood, but the houses are pastel and there are palm trees. Like, it doesn't look like a bad neighborhood. And so even though Maggie and Zoe are kind of broke ass assistants living in a bad part of town, it's still beautiful on screen. And I was like, oh, I guess that's just LA. Like, you can't tell other than the sounds of sirens constantly when we're filming that we're in a bad neighborhood, because it just looks stunning.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the relationship between Grace and Maggie, and the world of kind of assistants in Los Angeles. There's a big survey last year by a group that's now called Pay Up Hollywood, looking at the role of assistants, how much they're paid, how many times they've had things thrown at them or yelled at them. And I thought it seemed like you were trying to walk a really careful line there, right? Of like showing that there were moments when Grace, was a total diva, but she always, except for maybe the moment that she fired her, which was, probably understandable how that happened, but she always, she never really crosses that line, right? Which I thought was important, because life imitates screen, screen imitates life, but I thought it was good to see sort of a diva who, didn't super mistreat her assistant.
Yeah, I mean, to me, we've already seen this sort of amazing Devil Wears Prada relationship of like the diva boss and the put upon assistant. So what I was really interested in was the intimacy that happens between assistants and bosses, and how like, this person is like, Flora was an assistant when she wrote the script after, and she was saying like how you just sort of jump into this world where you're like listening to your boss, and 1 minute they're on the phone with their divorce attorney and you're hearing every personal thing in their life, and the next they're like screaming a lunch order at you, and just like this sort of in-between place of like, what was interesting to me was the celebrity status of Grace, and how the bigger and more famous you get, the smaller your circle of people you trust gets, and how you just get into this weird place with this assistant who's technically your employee, but also sometimes your only friend in the room, and sometimes, the intimacy seems like it's always riding this line of, are we friends? Are we not friends?
Right.
Am I close to you? Am I not? Like, are you going to help me? Am I wasting my time here? Is this like the codependency of that relationship was interesting to me. And also how they could like be each other's biggest support systems or each other's worst enemies, and I was really excited about a movie that shows women how to be each other's support systems.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there wasn't like the super inappropriate, like bad behavior, but to me that also speaks to like she's an African American boss and her assistant is white, and that like is something you have to that informs behavior as well, right? Like there is a moment in the movie where Maggie's privilege is called out, and it's really interesting to me that that Flora wrote that scene where she is like finally saying, okay, your like kind of naive privilege is also what you get from not just youth, but also from being white, and Tracee's character doesn't get that privilege and calls out Maggie on it. And I thought that was a really cool thing. Like, I don't know that, like, I think if Maggie's character was Black, I wonder how that relationship would be totally different, and I wonder if Tracee's character was white, like she could throw shit at Maggie, you know what I mean? But I think there's always a thing where the Black boss cannot, like, has to still be in line with the white assistant, and that was really interesting to me, even though obviously it's not dealt with overtly in the movie. It informs everything. You're like, oh boy.
Well, I feel like we could go down that road for like days.
We really could. I know. I just thought.
And maybe we will. We'll see how many questions the audience has. If they don't, we're going to come back to this. I did want to acknowledge that the film qualifies for the Reframe stamp, which Nisha is a Reframe ambassador. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with the program, Reframe is a collaboration between WIF and the Sundance Institute and about 75 ambassadors, and we award these gender parity stamps to films and television shows that have gender balanced production. So there's an 8-point system, and you get a point for each of the categories, and then you get double points if there's women of color in lead positions in each of the categories. It's all on the website. And so this film has obviously female director, female writer, a lot of female department heads, female leads. So it, gets the Reframe stamp easily. And we've seen a slight uptick in the number of films and television shows getting the stamp in the last year, but there's still a lot of work to do to get to gender parity. And in the last couple of weeks, the conversation across the country, around the world, and very much focused in the entertainment industry is how do we increase the numbers of people of color, specifically Black people, working in the industry in general, and then of course in leadership positions. So when we think about increasing the numbers of women and the number of people of color, I know it's the thing you think about and care about, like, how do we get there? Like, what else needs to be happening to have the industry reflect the population, if not do better?
I know. For me, it's just so simple as to just hire the women. Like, it's just one of the things that there's always so many committees and initiatives and diversity fellowships, and I'm just like, well, just hire us, and then that solves the problem. So it's kind of like this thing of, I'm always amazed at how much talking about there is of it and how little like actually just hiring people and changing the equation instantly. But I think a lot that isn't talked about is like, there's this idea of like, well, we should just always hire the best person for the job. But you can't do that without judging. What are you like judging how they're the best person for the job? Because if you're judging it based on experience, then you got to factor in the fact that these people were held out for many years. So we don't get the experience that people who are not being systematically discriminated against get, you know, and then the resources available for the real too. So I think we always found that like if there was a woman who had the experience and or even just, you know, had a lot of assistant jobs but didn't actually get the department head job, to just give her a chance to be the department head. It's not like it's not that big of a deal. It turns out like you can just hire them, and if they really blow it, you can replace them. But it was really nice on this one to just give a lot of, I mean, there were so many qualified women. It just seemed ridiculous to me that people would ever say they can't find women to do these jobs because there were too many overqualified applicants, you know. So so I don't know. It's always such a disconnect for me when I hear people say, I don't know any female directors. Like that would happen sometimes in the room, and I was like, wow, well, I know, you know, 365 of them, so I could just give you their names, and you can have a different one here every single day. That like was a really so I don't know. It seems like maybe there's just a disconnect between the women who really want these jobs and can do them and the people who are hiring, because I keep hearing like, I don't know these people, or I don't know where to find them, or how do I hire female directors, or how do I, you know. So that's why I think what Women in Film is doing is so important, because you're making a database that's like, here they are, you know, here's where you go. This is a list of women you can hire. Here are their experience levels. Here's they're just, I think that we can't find them is not going to fly anymore. So
Yeah.
that's pretty awesome. So I'm hoping to see a lot more accelerated change.
And you're right, we do that, and we're about to do it again. We launched an initiative last week called Hire Her Back, which is when we get back to work, hire women. And as part of that campaign, we will be pointing at women who are available to do all these different jobs in front of, but more importantly, even behind the camera. Because I think everybody on this call probably knows that there are many of you. So we will continue to work on that, and continue to also get the industry to prioritize women of color, because those numbers are so low, and there are so many incredibly qualified women, including those who are in the membership. I think I'm supposed to move to the questions, and I see a bunch of them coming up, and there's some really good ones. So since we're kind of on this subject, there's a question here about being in an unprecedented time in the film industry, and I think she's referring to both the kind of uprising, but also being in lockdown, or in, you know, whatever we are, working from home, dealing with COVID.
Yeah.
And so the question is, you know, what are you and your colleagues talking about, you know, what's to come in the next few months around both production and exhibition?
Oh, wow. I think everybody's really focused on how to get back to production safely. Like I'm hearing a lot of, you know, guidelines. The unions are working really hard on establishing some guidelines for how to return safely back to production. My colleagues and I are mostly talking about how our indie roots are really going to come into service here, because, you know, it wasn't so long ago that I was making movies with 6 people as the crew. And so we were kind of talking about that, like how it's just not, you know, to be perfectly honest, there's so much waste on big movies right now. Like even on the high note, I was walking around being like, do we really need that truck? Like, do we really need 6 people to hold this piece of equipment? Like, can we, I think like the Indian American in me was constantly worried about all the money being wasted left and right. So I was just like, can we bring it all down a notch and still get this quality? I think so, you know, let's figure it out. But, you know, you don't want to be the bummer on your first studio film. So I was kind of like just walking around making a lot of mental notes of things we didn't need. But I feel like, you know, those are the conversations, like what kind of stories. I think the impact is going to be on the stories that get made, because there are only certain things you can shoot safely now, you know, and certain things you can't. And so I was just part of a shoot today. It was the first one I'd been a part of that went back to production, and they had a paramedic on set that was the COVID compliance officer who took everyone's temperature when he came in. They required everyone to get a test within like, I think 3 days before he came to set. And even on set, it was all social distanced and everybody had masks. So it was really interesting to see like, okay, and it was a crew of like 6 people. So I thought, how's this gonna work? How are we going back into, into the world of shooting? So I think that's all really fascinating and interesting challenges. But it's very limiting to the content. Like you can't think you're gonna shoot like a Downton Abbey these days. Like that's just not gonna happen, so I'm curious what kind of shows are gonna come out of it.
I imagine it's gonna be a moment where the environment drives the story as opposed to the story driving the environment. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Which is like indie film. Like that's, like I remember on Chutney Popcorn, like one of the actresses was like, well, why is my house this house and like her apartment's so cool? And I was like, because my friend Julie said we could shoot in her apartment, and because this cousin said we could shoot in her house. Like that's it. That's like there was no like your character would have this kind of house. It was like this is the house we're allowed to shoot in. So that's your character's house, So I feel like that kind of thing will come back to serve us now of like, well, where are we allowed to shoot and what are we allowed to do? And we'll like make the best of that situation.
There's a question here from Mary Lou Belly, who seems like someone who you might know, and she wants you to talk a little bit more about your vision of both versions. I don't know what that means, but I thought you might know what that means.
Both versions?
Both versions.
I don't know.
I don't know either. Okay, well, so then let's have you just talk a little bit more about your vision. So we started on that, right? So like when you read the script, what drew you to it and how did you go about? But like, if you could talk a little bit more about how you sort of built that world and were able to bring your specific vision into the story.
God, it's such a weird thing to try to figure out like how you do what you do and then talk about it. I guess it was just, thinking about the characters, what they were doing, what actors or actresses might be able to play those parts, the world itself, like what, I sort of try to build out like how I would convince you that Grace Davis was a music icon, who she was, like, because one thing that was interesting was when we talked about it, we realized that there wasn't really like so many of these women artists who are icons, like, kind of die young, or there weren't that many examples. Like we're sort of looking at like Beyonce like in 15 or 20 years from now, so we were kind of trying to figure out who that icon is and how and what her music style was, what she would wear, how she would dress, like how she would talk, and really like once I sort of brought on Linda Cohen, our music supervisor, and started listening to demos of songs and meeting with songwriters, then we sort of put together Maggie's character of being a producer and what her sound would be like and what she brought to the music. And that was really, really an exciting part of it, was to meet with this young woman named Sarah Aarons, who's written like every hit song you've heard on the radio. And she just sort of had an incredible sound. And once I realized, okay, this is what Maggie's sound is, we got really excited about, I think there was a draft of the movie where Maggie was a singer, and Flora and I got really excited about Maggie wanting to be a producer, because we also found out that in the history of the Grammys, only 3 women have ever been nominated for Producer of the Year. And so I just was like, it would be cool to encourage a generation of women to get into producing, because I feel like young women are always told, like, be the star, be on stage, get the fans, get the likes, have everybody looking at you. And I love that this movie is saying, no, that's not the goal. Like the goal is be a part of the creative process, like live a creative life. That's the winning streak there. Not like be famous, but like how to live your life where you are enhancing art and bringing like a collaborative sort of fun, like it's really fun what we do. Like so many of these music movies, it's like the person is depressed or commits suicide or gets into addiction. And I love that this sort of celebrated how fun and exciting and incredible amount of hard work our industry is. Like it, to me, was like really great to just not have it veer into this depressing like darkness, but stay in this like positive light of this is a really fun industry. We get to lead really fun lives. It's more work than you ever imagined, but it's awesome and it's so satisfying in the end. So I think it was like leaning into all of that.
That was a great answer.
Okay.
There's another question here from a woman who is also Indian American. She's been a fan of yours since Junkie Punky Girls. And she's asking, well, and I'll note she's an actor and a comedian. And she's asking how you decided to make that transition from telling stories about Indian Americans to telling more mainstream stories, and if it was a conscious choice or something that just kind of happened.
Oh, I think it's, I don't think I've made that transition. Like I still want to tell Indian American stories and still, but to me it was always just about representation and representing women and people whose stories haven't been told or have not been centered in the stories that are telling. So it wasn't a conscious choice of, I'm going to stop telling Indian American stories now and start telling these. I mean, a lot of it is like the material that was coming forward and also what was being greenlit and financed. So, like with Late Night, it was really exciting to get back to that sort of character and have an Indian American who's trying to break into like the sort of television industry was, really easy to relate to. But that was so interesting to me because when I first came onto the movie, it was going to be this big studio film. And then, the movie got handed back to Mindy and it lost its sort of studio financing. And then that was pretty devastating. And then we were like, okay, well, I know how to make an indie film. Let's just go to New York and shoot this film on our own. So then we went the indie route, and it was just always nice. It's always nice to know you have the superpower of being able to do something with very little resources, because it's always going to come in handy. As a female filmmaker, you're often going to you're never going to get all the resources that you need. So you always just kind of make do and how to make the best do with what you get. I think is something we all share in common.
A good follow-up question to that's from the audience is, what are you doing now in your movies that you wish you had known when you started out? So you've been talking about how the indie spirit is helping you, but what have you learned in the 20 years since that you wish you knew, like when you made Chutney Popcorn?
Oh my God. What do I wish I knew? I mean, I guess I wish I knew there was such a thing as the television industry, and that there were writers' rooms, and that there was this whole thing called TV where you could work as a writer. And I didn't know that, I think I didn't really even know what a director was or did. So I went to, after film school, even when I was in film school, I was sort of always trying to get everybody together to work on something collaboratively. And now I look back and I'm like, oh, actually what you were trying to do, dummy, was create the TV industry in this weird auteur film school that you were, partly a part of and partly like trying to do something different. And so it turns out like I wish I had known there was this industry called television and gotten myself in like a writer's room early on and learned that craft and that aspect. But I also think if I had done that, I probably wouldn't be directing movies right now. I probably would have been sidetracked into like TV writing, which is not a bad place to be sidetracked.
But also television changed so much. Like the television that we have today is not the television that we had in the 2000s even, right? Yeah. So the sort of the indie world and the TV world started to do more crossover kind of later in the 2010 like through to now, where you have like you have a lot of independent directors in television and going back and forth.
Yeah, because it used to be very like separated worlds, but I think if you like Shari Freelo brought this up at Sundance, she was like, I think HBO was kind of brought to its great heights on the back of indie filmmakers. And I was like, oh, tell me more of this theory, Shari. And she was, it's really interesting to hear her talk about that and how like the vision of these indie film directors really like elevated television to a new place. And it was cool. It was like, she sort of showed how it was linked together, and how it, exactly what you're saying, how it really elevated both things, like indie filmmakers who were a little bit like up against the wall because they stopped making indie films and financing them, got into TV right when streaming came along as well. Like streaming kind of saved a ton of indie filmmakers that I know.
Right.
Were like, okay, we finally found another platform for our work.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
As a side note, it's Shari Frilo's birthday today.
It is. Happy birthday, Shari Frilo.
All right, there's a question here about, you mentioned hearing a lot of no's that you faced before you started getting your yeses. Can you talk about some other specific obstacles you faced in your career and how you overcame them?
I mean, I guess you don't really realize anything was an obstacle until, I don't know. I think, one thing I was pretty surprised is that I grew up, like all of us, watching studio movies and loving them. And then when I became a filmmaker, I just assumed I was going to get to go make those. And I think I didn't realize until I did the high note that I had sort of closed that door in my own head that I was going to be allowed to direct a studio film. Like I think, I was going on, even when I drove up to Universal Studios for the meeting and the gate would go up and I'd drive onto the lot, I would sort of get this feeling like, they're not gonna let me make a movie here. I just kept, and even when I was like, got the job, I was like, all right, but somewhere along the line, like I just kept thinking some dude was gonna come tap me on the shoulder and be like, beat it, I'm here now, like get out of here. And I think that like feeling of, I like snuck into this or got in behind, someone's back or something, or like that realization that I had closed this door to a dream I had and didn't even realize I had closed it just from all the years of no's. I didn't even realize I had thought this is no longer a possibility for me until like I got it. And then I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I gave up on this dream, So I think that's like one big thing, is to try to be more conscious of what you are subtly accepting as a limitation. Without realizing it, I don't know how you do. How do you be conscious of the things that you're doing without realizing? But you know what I mean, like that sort of thing where you didn't even realize you had talked yourself out of something that you wanted, just because you didn't see it as a possibility any longer.
Totally, I think a lot of us do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it comes out of nowhere. I mean, I was talking earlier today about how when I direct episodic TV, I pull up, to the, like even just Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I pulled up to the lot and the security guard takes your, ID, and they were like, what are you here for? And I say, I'm here to direct Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And the guard will always go, oh, wow, good for you, And I was like after the third or fourth time that happened, not just on that show, I was like, I wonder, like the subtle message, and that's a subtle message of that is like, you don't belong here. Yeah, how'd you get in here? Like, I don't know if guys get that, if they're like, I'm the director of the show. If someone's like, great, good for you. Like, it's just a weird commentary. And I never used to even say, I'm here to direct the show, except for the AD, this other show I was doing. I was always late because whenever I got to the gate, they would send me to the satellite lot and I'd have to walk a bunch of blocks, and I was a little late to the meetings, and the AD finally said, what's going on? And I was like, I'm so sorry. I always get sent to this far off satellite lot. And he was furious, and I didn't even think about it. And, he had he has an African-American wife, and he was like pissed. And I was like, I didn't even figure out what was going on. And he was like, tomorrow when you get here, tell them you're here to direct the episode and tell me what happens. And I was like, whatever, and I pulled up and they were like, about to send me off, and I was like, oh, I'm here to direct this episode. And they're like, oh, and they of course lifted the gate, and I got the parking that was like right next to the building. And I told the AD, and he was so mad, and he was just like, it's because you're not the picture of what they think of a director, so they're sending you off to like basically the assistant lot because they don't know that you're here to do this job. And it was just this weird thing where if you don't even know there's the privilege exists of parking next to the building, for example, you don't know you're missing out on it, because if this guy wasn't conscious and didn't understand what was happening and tell me how to get around it, I wouldn't have had the key to then be told "good for you" at the Brooklyn.
It makes you wonder how many other things we're missing.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
how many other privileges do men get, or do white people get,
Yeah.
straight people get, that like we don't even know we're not getting until
Yeah.
someone tells you.
Exactly. Like, who even knew that was a thing? I just thought everybody had to park way over there and run over.
Well, the crazy thing is Angela Robinson tells a really similar story.
Oh, really?
That she told when she got the Fusion Award at Outfest, I don't know, years ago now, and about how it was actually the Black security guard who realized, oh my God, you're the director, and took her to a totally different parking lot, a totally different parking spot.
Wow. Yeah.
Like it was the first time
These are
somebody
such LA stories.
really
Like,
saw me.
It's such an LA based story of like parking privilege. It's like no one else gives a shit. And then in New York, it's great. You all take the subway. It's fine.
There's a question from an audience member, and I actually have been thinking about this too. Although we talk about it sometimes, what are you doing now? What are you doing next? You talked a little bit about shooting something today. And I'll just add to that, like, is there a dream project that you want to make that you haven't had the opportunity to make yet?
Yeah, so now I want like every indie filmmaker, I want my own TV series, and but the dream right now is to put like a brown family in people's living rooms every week, because I think our country is like terrified of brown people, and I think one way around that is to just put us in the living room every week so that everybody can like increase some empathy for brown people and stop being so afraid of everyone. It's just like that thing where, remember when Shonda Rhimes was out there saying that, like, you know, there hadn't been a Black female lead on TV in 30 years? And I think you can't like separate that from Trump getting elected. Like, that's not to be too self-important, but we are like, our media, our art in our industry is one of the most influential culture changers we have. And so for us to not recognize that that is such a vital tool to like leading change, it was sad to me, like when Trump got elected, and then somehow, like, you know, we were convinced that we were living in bubbles. And I remember reading this article that was like, actually, I live in California, I'm on the coast. When I go to work every day, I come into contact with people from different ethnicities, people from different religious backgrounds, people from different sexualities and genders. Like, I'm actually not living in a bubble. I am living in the current future, and you are living in a very monolithic bubble, and that is the past, and that's not what is current or even accurate to today. So it was this weird sort of game or trick that they pulled on us to think that we're like in some elite bubble, when we're not. We're actually in the most diverse communities, like working with the most diverse people. So I just felt like you know, we, rather than going to like, how do we appeal to these people and how do we make shows that will appeal to the small white bubbles that voted for Trump, I was so disappointed. And I'm happy that now everybody's like, actually, no, how do we make shows that teach everybody to come along to the future with us and not stay trapped in this fearful past? And that's just the goal now, just to have my own series that kind of helps people along to that inevitable and brighter future than what's happening.
A few years ago, the New York Times did this map where they showed what blue states watch on television versus what the red states watch on television, and the shows that crossed over the most were the Shonda Rhimes shows.
Oh, wow.
So
they're the most diverse shows on TV.
But also when you think about like people of color, queer people, disabled people that are in, you know, so many of her shows, and knowing that those are the images that people across the country are seeing, the stories that they're hearing, then we think like, you know, maybe the generation that was raised on those shows will be different.
Yeah.
We hope.
Sure. Well, you know, remember when gay marriage was being debated all across the country, which was horrible feeling, but like, to watch your rights being debated on national TV by the public was weirdo and awful. But you know, there were so many of those older people being like, well, I watched Will and Grace and it really made me rethink my feelings on gay people. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. Like, let's do it. We want to, shows will help you rethink your feelings on people. Then we have a responsibility to put more of those shows out there.
I'm excited to see those shows that you bring us.
Oh, thanks, Kirsten. I'm excited to finally get to make them. It's exciting. It used to be like, you know, you'd go in and pitch a show like this and you could just feel the panic in the room. And now everybody's like, oh, what do you have? What is it? How culturally specific is it? And what do we, you know, it just feels like such an exciting time for our art form, that like so many stories can be told, and there is like finally so many platforms for these diverse stories. It's pretty cool.
Speaking of which, I assume everybody who's here now has watched The High Note.
So otherwise, we ruined a lot of it for you.
Right, that's true. But please help spread the word, because that's how Nisha can continue to bring us these stories, is that the film does well. It is doing well, but you know, more eyeballs, the better. I think it's available on a lot of platforms.
It is. I think it's everything except Netflix right now.
So watch it, get your friends and family to watch it.
Still trying to figure out a drive-in night for women in film to go do it.
Oh my God, I want that so much.
I know, it'd be so cool if we could all just like be 6 feet apart from each other to do it at a drive-in theater. I
know, okay, there's a lot, I see a lot of clapping happening. Oh look, there's more things popping up in the chat. Well, sorry if you asked me questions in the chat. I didn't see them. I was answering the questions in the Q&A, and we have now come to the end of our time.
I know.
Are you looking at the chat now?
I'm just looking at the chat. Oh, yeah. Oh, Carol, hello. There's so many nice, everyone's saying such nice things in here. Thank you for all the nice comments.
Yeah, it is. If you haven't looked at it yet, it's people telling Nisha how much they enjoyed the film, and then also commenting on some of your comments, which is really nice. Nisha, if you don't have a chance to read all of them, I think we have a way to save.
I was mistaken for being the script supervisor. My favorite thing is when I pull up on location, and this always happens. The security guard always goes, "Are you background?" And then I always have to be like, "No, I'm not background. Thank you." Like, and then I have to find somewhere, and then I have to like find a way to say I'm the director without it feeling obnoxious, which it shouldn't feel obnoxious, but like.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, we talk a lot about making sure that the unconscious bias training that's part of Reframe is brought to everybody across the studio, and it sounds like we need to get that to security.
Yeah, you're right. That is,
because they're the gate. They are a different kind of a gatekeeper, right?
Yeah, literally the gatekeeper. That's awesome.
Thank you for spending this hour with us.
Thank you. That was a really fast hour.
I know.
As always, thank you for all the work you do, Kirsten. I know you've like been doing this for a very long time. It's so funny, and like sometimes I'm like, oh, we're still talking about this stuff, but things have really changed and gotten better. I mean, specifically my career, so that's kind of awesome. That's kind of a hopeful thing, because I always felt like, you know, I don't know, it's just that thing where you see the statistics and then you're like, oh my God, has it really been that hard? Like that when the Department of Justice brought that lawsuit against Hollywood, I know a lot of women, we all just sort of were like, oh my God, it wasn't me. It was like systemic discrimination that was making it so impossibly difficult. But then, you know, it's like I didn't have any family or friends or connections that were going to help me out in this industry until I went to film school. And so I always feel like if I could do it, if I could get in here, like anyone can, because I seriously did just sneak in through that gate, even though nobody was looking. Or were looking very strongly, but I just sort of blustered my way in. So I just feel like anyone can do it if I did it. And it's just like a great organization. I know Women in Film has always been like near and dear to my heart, because when I made my first short that I didn't even know was a short, Women in Film was the organization that called it a film and then called me a filmmaker for the first time. And then I was like, oh, I'm a filmmaker. I have a badge that says I'm a filmmaker. And just that thing in your brain that clicks, and then I started trying on that word and referring to myself as a filmmaker. And it's kind of like you do it and then you make it so, you know? So I don't know. It's amazing what you're doing with the organization. I will follow you whatever you choose to head up and do.
Well, I hope we're doing it for so many more people now. We really, we're trying to help get those doors open, both in individual ways and also in systemic ways, right? Because both are needed. Like the system has to change, which is what we work on through a lot of our programs, and then we also, help to champion individuals through the mentoring program and the production program and
it's an exciting time in our culture that it's on everybody. The things you've been talking about and fighting for so long are words I'm hearing people who have never said them before say. So it's like, like white allies and all, it just is such I went to the protest and just seeing that, like, it was so multiracial, and I just kept thinking about the civil rights movement and how it didn't really, like, until you have allies, everybody pushing for the same thing, change doesn't come, so this is a really super exciting time. But I know and want to acknowledge you for like pushing and being on this forefront for so long. It's awesome to hear everybody saying the things you've been saying for decades.
Well, I think it's important right now too that there are so many smart people, specifically smart women, who are leading, particularly around the movement for Black lives. And now I feel like now it's my turn to listen and follow, or to repeat the great things that they're saying, including so many women that are in this organization, our staff, our board. And so I'm doing my work, but it might be in a little more of a quiet way than I think it has been in the past.
That's amazing too. You're always doing the right thing. It's pretty exciting.
Well, I'm not sure that's true, but
I
am. All right, go hug that baby.
I will.
Until I can hug her.
I know. One day you'll get to hug her.
Yeah.
That's the thing we need to work on changing is childcare, and why is it accepted that our work days in our industry are 13-hour days? Because I think, I don't remember who said it, but they were like, until you address childcare in our industry, you're not really addressing women directing, because if you offer a woman a job she can't do, it's not really changing anything, So that's our next battle.
It's about to come slamming down in our faces, right? Because if kids don't go back to school, which I was hearing today from our colleagues in New York, that it's quite likely they're not going to go back to school in New York in August, September, maybe a little more late.
Going to school in August and September, I think we know that, right? I mean, I have a lot of, obviously, like, family in Canada, and they were like, why is everyone freaking out? And I was like, because we don't have a leader. Like, they have they already know this is the model, what's happening in Canada. Schools are going to be open September, October, closed November, December for the check-in of the wave, and then they're calling it then. And they already have a plan in place. They know what they're doing. They have protocols. Like, we're just free for all here. It's insane. Like, but I think it's pretty safe to say no one's going to school in the fall.
But like for women who don't have, family or, other, a spouse or partner who can take care of the kids, like, what is going to happen? Like, how many women aren't going to be able to go back to work because of childcare? Like, it's huge.
Yeah.
And it is the thing that we probably are going to have to deal with faster than we ever thought we were. Like, maybe we were like slowly going to work towards, like, getting some childcare on sets or getting some stipends for childcare, but like now we have to like figure it out really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be the next brain trust.
That is. That is for sure.
Yeah. All right. Good to see you. Here's a big hug.
Thank you. Big hug back to you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for watching the movie, and supporting the movie, and always being so supportive of me. This is like the best. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.